Change your mind, change your money, change your life. I am Coach Rob Lee Simmons, the host of this podcast, and let me be your tour guide to greatness. If I was doing any better, I would be you. Welcome to the Greatness Academy podcast. I am here with my man, Kevin Wayne Johnson. He is the CEO of the Johnson Leadership Group. Welcome to the show, my man.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful invitation and wonderful opportunity to be with you. As I was stating before we went live, I'm proud of the work that you're doing, and I'm looking forward to being your guest.
Outstanding, man. So, my guests, we like to get into the business. Let me ask you, take us back to the beginning of, your thought that being a leader is what I'm going to do.
Well, I tell you, it starts in the home. So I'm the son of a U.S. Marine, and my mom served in the federal government, not for an entire career, but for a good number of years. I was born on a military base, and I have one sibling, a younger brother, 3.5 years younger than I am, and he was also born on a military base. Me, Quantico, Virginia, my brother, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. My leadership journey actually got started as a child because my brother was born with a mental disability. And Dad, being a Marine, he's away on the front lines fighting in America's wars, Vietnam twice, Okinawa, Japan once. So I'm at home as a child helping my mom raise a mentally disabled son in her case and brother in my case. I had to nurture him, serve him, support him, advocate for him, negotiate for him, keep the bullies off of him because, children can be cruel when someone's different. They don't mean anything by it. It's just what children do. And so that leadership journey started very early in terms of understanding the importance of getting to know how I can support this neurological imbalance that's going on in his life and at the same time serve and help to navigate the roads that he would have to travel. So that's really where it started. And then based upon that learning, I was able to, once I grew up, kind of transition that into school, into the community, into my neighborhood, into the workplace. And then ultimately what I'm doing now in this season of life, my own leadership development and coaching business. So it's kind of interesting how life serves you a hand and you play the hand you're dealt. And guess what? It didn't end because when I met a young lady that I fell in love with, and she accepted my proposal and marriage, from our union, we had 3 sons. The oldest son was adopted. Then we had our middle son, and here comes the baby boy. And all of our sons are back to back to back. So when the oldest was 2, his younger brother was 1, and his younger brother was a newborn. So all my buddies called me Fred McMurray, my 3 sons. But his name is Cameron. And we discovered at 2 years old that he's autistic. Mm-hmm. So, here we go again, right? Wash, rinse, and repeat. What I learned at home, helping my younger brother, I was able to do as a father, as a young father with an autistic son. And again, carry that into the workplace, into the neighborhood, into my church, my social and civic organization. So that's the humble beginning of why I'm so passionate about this topic of leadership. And I spend 95% of my waking hours just pouring into people, teaching them principles and strategies on how to lead people better.
No, that's amazing. And I love your story and your journey, because your journey it sounds like it's been trying. In having those experiences through life, how much do you think your experience plays a part in leadership?
I would say 100%, 100%, because leadership, what I teach, what I speak about, what I coach, and what I mentor is more than just what we know. There's an expectation from all of our leaders that we follow that there is a level of subject matter expertise, that there is acumen and intelligence there in their mind. That's why they're in the role. So people in leadership positions they bring credibility based upon what they know. But it doesn't stop there. Quite frankly, I would argue that's just the beginning. Leadership, because we're leading people, has a lot to do with demonstrating outwardly that we give a care that they've shown up.
It's a big piece.
Leaders can respect, leaders can care, leaders can value and honor people that we are leading. We can also serve them. We can be empathetic and compassionate. And that does not make us weak. It makes us human. So when we can align what's in the heart with what's in the mind, now we are well on our way to being good leaders, because everybody has issues and concerns that they're dealing with. And without formulating a relationship that leads to trust, most people walk around internalizing how they feel because they don't feel like they have anyone they can talk to about it. And when they internalize, they're not going to perform at their best. They're not going to be a high producer. And guess what? It also affects our personal health, both physical and mental. And so leaders have to be a little bit more open and conscious and aware that although people do show up to earn their check and to get their benefits, yeah, we understand that. But a bigger picture is, how can we help them to be the best that they can be? And that's a responsibility for the leaders. And that's what we encourage both aspiring leaders and existing leaders as well.
No, that's great. And just kind of looking at the dynamic of how leaders are made. Some leaders are kind of born leaders, natural leaders. But my experience in the military is that even the best leaders can still continue to learn. So what is some of the things that you teach people who are just natural born leaders?
Yeah, and I'm in 100% agreement with you. I do believe that there are quite a few men and women that are actually born. They're gifted to be leaders, but everyone has to be cultivated. Everyone has to be trained. Everyone has to be developed. So the one thing, well, actually two things. There are really two things that are really, really, really high on the food chain. Number one is communication. So communication is more than just the words that we say, but we have to put forth an effort to connect with people or the person that we're having a conversation with. We have to connect, common ground, interest, build bridges. It's one thing to direct someone to do something on a project or a task or an action or an initiative, but it's something else to ask. There's a big difference between directing and asking. And so when we communicate as leaders, we have to make a conscious effort to connect with the person that we're speaking to or the group that we're speaking to. So for example, you and I are having a conversation, and I love your conversational style as a part of your podcast. But guess what? There's hundreds, if not thousands of people out there that are listening, that are loyal followers of your program. So in our conversation, we have to be intentional to make sure that we're connecting with them so that they can pick up some tips and some tools and some nuggets that would be applicable to where they are. So that's number one. Communication is key. It's much more than just the words we say, because we also send messages through our body language, our facial expressions, and also how we say the words, which is the tone. And then the second one that's very, very high on the totem pole is listening. So many people don't know this, but you and I speak at a rate of about 180 words a minute on average. That's on average, because many people talk very, very fast, and some people talk real, real slow. But on average, you and I talk at about 180 words a minute. However, we listen at a rate of about 350 words a minute on average. So what happens is that while you and I are talking to each other, if what I'm saying is not interesting, or if it's not really applicable in the moment, or if you disagree within the first 5 to 7 seconds, then you're going to tune me out. because you're already ahead of where you think I'm going.
Mhm.
Whether I'm actually going there or not is irrelevant, right? Your
Good point.
perception is your reality. And that's a common way that all of us, me included, miscommunicate with other people. Now, listening takes practice and it's an art, and we have to get training. We are not innately born and gifted to be listeners because we often want to change the subject and we often want to interrupt a person. And that sends a bad signal in and of itself. So, communication and listening are very, very high on the food chain when it comes to those key principles that leaders need to really understand and work on to execute and implement to be the most effective for your team, for your organization, quite frankly, for your entire company, or in my case, my federal government background, or in your case, military, your unit, your command, etc. Very, very important concept that we think we're good at, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty and we have some really in-depth conversations about it, most leaders will admit, you know what, I need to work on my communication skills and I need to be a better listener. And now we're on our way to being more effective leaders.
No, I've completely believe that and agree with that. I got a degree on the wall that says communications, and I was like kind of going back at some of my old books and looking at some key aspects of actually communicating, and I learned that I naturally don't do a lot of these things. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. Like it's essential to practice communication skills because it is easily and naturally um, easily and naturally way to get lost in the sauce trying to communicate. Like you just have to practice. You have to be intentional when you're listening. You have to be very precise when you're speaking, know when to slow down, know when to speed up. But these things, they don't happen without practice. Let's kind of shift the narrative a little bit, and let's talk about you serving as a chief of staff or the DoD, right? A chief of staff manages a number of people, but they also manage personalities and a number of other things. What are some things as a leader you would recommend someone who is managing multiple personalities?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So here's the running joke, right? And in my role as a chief of staff, people would always refer to me as the chief of stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
we go to the chief of staff when we don't know, and we don't want to get involved, and we want to pass something on to somebody else.
Yeah.
But here's what I really enjoyed about it, and this is a message for all of us in leadership positions or not. You may be aspiring to be a leader, and it's this: leaders are learners. And the biggest thing I learned when I served as a chief of staff, it was my final 3 years of my career. I had been asked to take the role much earlier, and I had declined, and I finally came around and I accepted it, and I'm glad I did. What I learned is if you don't know the answer, it's okay to be honest, authentic, and genuine, and let people know you don't know the answer. However, the discovery and finding out the answer, doing the homework and the due diligence and the research is what made the position so incredibly interesting, because we don't know what we don't know, but it can be quite fulfilling to go out there and find the answer, ask questions, be inquisitive, be curious, go into territories that you've never been in before, learn things that you've never learned before. And that's really what made the job so interesting. So I would submit to everyone, all of the listeners, that regardless of your work role and regardless of your level in the organization, be inquisitive and be curious and go into those areas that you just don't know and find out new and exciting information. I had a chance to oversee human resources. I oversaw information technology, property, security, facilities. I was responsible for all of the protocol and the visits because I was often responsible for the military command in terms of supporting the 4-star, the 3-star, the 2-star, the 1-star, and even the colonel. So the flag officers and the general officers. Being responsible for visits and protocol is not easy. You can't mess up. When a 3-star is coming to visit another 3-star, you can't mess up. There is no room for error. So you have to be on your P's and Q's, and you have to be really, really insightful to make sure that people on your team also dot their I's and cross their T's. So there's a lot of delegation, a lot of trust and confidence in your team. I really, really enjoyed that. I was also oversaw all the training and all of the coaching. So it was just a very, very dynamic, and it helped Kevin Johnson to become a much more well-rounded person as well as a leader. And I'm forever grateful. So what I learned then is what I teach now with other leaders, because you're always multitasking. There's always an emergency. There's always a crisis du jour. There's always a change in the schedule. It would not be unusual that at 9:30 in the morning, I would receive an email from a superior officer saying, Kevin, I need you to take that briefing at 10 o'clock. So I've got 29 minutes to prepare, and it's not like I'm not available. You have to avail yourself, because now you're representing somebody at a higher level, but you also represent your organization and the company or the agency as well. So it was very fulfilling. I'm glad I did it. Taught me a lot. But anytime any of us multitask, it's a matter of just trying to stay balanced and organized as best you can and be a good communicator, because a chief of staff is on the fly. And I don't always have time to tell people why I need you to do something. I just need you to do it. I need it done. Like it's 12 o'clock noon. I need it by 3. I don't necessarily have a chance to explain why, but at some time in the future, I'll come back and then I'll let them know why. It's all part of communication and just being able to multitask. One of the most important lessons I learned in that job.
No, that is an amazing story, and I don't know if I aspire to be the chief of anything one day, but I know I've been in charge of a lot of people, and I know I don't want to call it a headache, but I do know the challenges that it brings to be able to do that. So let me ask you, as a leader, and I think about this all the time, and I actually wrote a speech and to prepare for a TEDx about servant leadership. And one of the things about servant leadership is it kind of reminds me of parenting, right? How much does the dynamic change in being a parent and being a leadership? And let me ask the question, frame it a little bit differently. What are some things that you can take away from leadership to help you become a better parent?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because there's definitely a correlation. So anytime anybody asks me, Kevin, what is the hardest thing about leadership? And it comes down to one word. And that one word is people. Mm. You're leading people, different personalities, different perspectives, different opinions, different private agendas, different motive operandi. I could go on and on and on. And think about that as it relates to your home. So whether you have one child or whether you have multiple children, they're all different. Just like in the workplace, the people that you're leading at work, they're all different. They have different needs. They're dealing with different circumstances, different concerns. They see the world through their lens, which is much different than the other person in terms of how they see the world through their lens. And same thing with the children. I have 3 sons, Kevin, Chris, and Cameron, all raised in the same household, all raised by the same parents, and all 3 are diametrically different. One's an extrovert, one's an introvert, and then Cameron, the baby boy, is autistic. So he's somewhere there in the middle. And how I handle and how I talk to and how I mentor and how I love and how I protect and how I give advice All three of those guys are different. And it's interesting, the older brother has taken a lot longer to gravitate toward what he wants to do in life than the younger brother, who has already completed his undergraduate degree in social work, just graduated from the University of South Carolina with his master's degree in social work. And now he knows on his own, through his own initiative, that the best employment opportunities come from studying to get his license and ultimately getting his license. So he'll be a licensed, certified social worker, and he'll be in great demand. He did that on his own initiative, where his older brother is still trying to figure things out. So working with people is the biggest challenge. And I'm talking about both at home as well as in the workplace. And I want people to just kind of think about that, let that marinate and process it and be aware of it, because everybody's different. And the translation is that there's no one way to deal with the multitude of people, because everybody's different.
So let's talk a little bit. So let's talk a little bit more about you and get a little bit more in depth. Man, some people we pick their brain. Others, we try to get a shovel and get everything, get as much as we can, right? So we're going in with the shovel, right? So multiple best-selling author. Let's talk about leadership with a servant's heart. Give me 3 things that people would take away from that book.
Well, here are the 3 things. So I have a theme that I use as a part of the books, and that is to know better, do better, and lead better. So I started out our conversation around the fact that leaders are learners, which means our thirst should never quench and our hunger should never be satisfied to know more. And so the more we know, now we can transition into doing something, the action, and that's do better. So know better is to emphasize the fact that, listen, we have enough room in our mind to absorb as much knowledge as we can, whether it's a movie or reading a blog or a white paper, Harvard Business Review, reading a book. I could go on and on and on in terms of how we gain knowledge. But once we know better, now we have to do something with what we know. So know better and do better. I always encourage all of my readers, and whenever I do any type of training or coaching and mentoring, I always put an action plan together, because I want people to now do something with what they know. And then the last piece is that now that you know better, and now that you are equipped to do better, now I want you to lead better. I want you to look through the rearview mirror and take a look and an assessment of how you've been leading. And now I want you to apply the strategies and principles that we've now introduced you to, and now lead better. Because I'm a firm believer that better leaders help to make the world a much better place. And when you look at where we are right now in America, we're just too divided, and we're too fragmented, too much arguing and fussing and disagreement going on. And I believe that better leaders can be the glue and the tape to kind of help bring people back together. And this goes way before the pandemic. A lot of people want to say, well, the pandemic is part. Well, it could be part of it, but I try to convince people not to use that as a reason. I started to see this pattern of behavior and mannerism amongst Americans long before the pandemic, and it's continuing. It hasn't stopped. So know better, do better, lead better.
No, I love it. And again, if you see me taking notes, it's because this is my shovel. I am making sure I get everything right. And I'm gonna definitely go back and watch this. I'll just love having guests like you on, man. I really appreciate it, and you sharing. Let's go a little bit more in depth into servant leadership. So we understand that servant leadership isn't the only style, but for you, it's the preferred style. What are give me 3 reasons why, as a leader, you would prefer to be a servant leader?
Number one is it takes our thought process off of looking at individuals as just workers, and it helps us to look at them as people.
That's good.
That's number one. And guess what? People are dealing with issues. So you probably have people on your team and in your organization that show up to work and they just had an argument with their spouse and they're bent out of shape. And they might want to look to somebody to have a conversation with about it. Not that we're therapists and not that we're counselors, we're not psychologists, but we can forge relationships at work with people, not in terms of being their friend, but just being friendly and approachable, because sometimes when they have this conversation, it can help them to heal. So that's always number one in terms of servant leadership. Again, people do show up to work to get paid and to earn their benefits. I get that. They have a work role and a job description, and there's an expectation that they perform. I get that. But they're not just workers, they're people. So that's the first thing. The second thing that comes to mind is we are created to really be fulfilled by serving people. And I tell people all the time, put me to the test. Put me to the test. Take about a week and just go into a mode of serving other people. Now, I'm not talking about being a doormat or anything like that, or not even being subservient, but I'm saying just take the time to introduce people to resources and training and having a conversation and helping, asking people, how can I help you? How can I assist you? And it's in that service that you and I are fulfilled, because now we're taking the focus off of ourselves and we're putting it on other people. Most people don't even think about it that way, but you and I are created to serve others. That's where the real fulfillment in life comes. So, all of these issues that people are dealing with around mental health, suicide rates are high, having low self-esteem, feeling depressed, isolated. I tell them in a heartbeat, come hang out with me. We're gonna go serve some people at the food pantry. Come hang out with me. We're gonna go sing some songs to the senior citizens at the senior citizen home. Come hang out with me. We're gonna go visit the ill in the hospital. In serving other people, and you transition your thought process from you to them. Now we're serving people, and it's very, very fulfilling. And then last but not least, as it relates to servant leadership, I want all of us to think in terms of sharing information and sharing knowledge. What I know is not just for me. Quite frankly, what I know is for everybody within my sphere of influence. And I tell leaders all the time, how dare you retain and keep good information and knowledge from people who can benefit from that? Because we're not going to be in this role for long. And we're going to have to do some succession planning and pass the baton. And you want the next person up to be equipped and prepared. And so we can't afford to withhold the sharing of information and knowledge. So those are the three that really come to mind that have really, really worked well for Kevin Johnson. And I'm sharing that with other aspiring and seasoned leaders as well. Because when it's all said and done, it's really not about us. It's about the people that we are entrusted to lead.
And what's really good, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, but I have to find out where this quote is. It's in the back of my head. I don't remember who said it, but they said that if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in serving others. And I think that is really the message that you gave. That was, oh man, that quote changed my life. But the way that you outline, being able to just change your perspective, being able to change your health, be able to change your mental health, just on the strength of serving others is so dominant. And just imagine doing that as a leader every day and going into whether it's work or volunteer work, wherever you serve, and just giving your all in other people, you'll find a lot of strength. So tell me a little bit about the Johnson Leadership Group. What is that? What do you guys do? Where can we find you?
Yeah. So the Johnson Leadership Group, and our website is www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. So when I retired from the federal government back in 2017, I took a couple of months off and then I went right into becoming an entrepreneur because I knew that I would want to pour into the life of the next generation of leaders. So I have a team of 10 diverse men and women who are certified across the board in leadership training and executive coaching. And we work with government agencies, corporations, primarily small and mid-size. We work with churches, nonprofit organizations, and academic institutions, because that's what a workforce is in those 5 areas in the marketplace. To build a better workforce at the frontline, mid-level, and senior levels in these organizations. We have a boatload of assessment tools that we use. We have a really, really robust curriculum that we use, both in person or virtual. And we are also certified executive coaches. And I also do a lot of speaking on the topic. And as you mentioned earlier, I'm also an author as well. So we are all about working with the multitude of individuals, teams, groups, and organizations that I just listed to create better leaders. And while leadership is the primary emphasis, we also do a lot of training on some of the soft skills as well. But embedded into the leadership training are things like influence, growth, communication, conflict management. I'm certified as a trainer and a consultant with the DISC. We have the Leadership 360-degree assessments. We have the leadership self-assessments. Emotional intelligence, we teach on that. We have those tools as well, where men and women take the assessment and you get a comprehensive written report that has both numerical scores and narrative, and we walk you through that. And we've been in business now for 5 years, going on 6.
Congratulations.
And yeah, thank you. We're certified across the board as a business, but then the individual teammates, including myself, we're certified as well. And the best is yet to come. We do work in Rwanda, Africa. We do work in Kenya, Africa, and then, of course, here in the United States. And as we continue to scale and grow and do work abroad, I'm just super, super excited about what's ahead of us. And we love what we do. So we've been growing at a rate of about 10 to 15% per year. And as we move closer and closer to the end of this calendar year, 2023, we look forward to continuing to maintain that momentum as we go into 2024. So super excited about it. Glad to be in this space, and I love what I do.
That's amazing. And what's that website for us one more time?
www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you this. That's my favorite question. I ask all of my guests this question. What was the largest purchase that you've ever made? And then how did it make you feel?
So when I was a young pup, I'm not going to tell my age, but you can probably guess. If I've worked for the government for 34 years and I retired 5 years ago, you can probably tell my age. But when I was a young pup, I did make a mistake. And my mistake was I purchased an expensive car because I could, not because I needed it. I did not need it, but I was a young guy, wasn't quite savvy in terms of financial management. And it was a very, very big price tag for a young 20-something-year-old who didn't really need that car. Long story short, I couldn't afford it, couldn't keep up with it because I had other things going on. And eventually the car was repossessed. The reason I have no shame in sharing that is because of what I've learned from that lesson. What I learned from that lesson is that it's always better to live a life where you are definitely living beneath your means.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Figure out how to generate multiple streams of income and at the same time keep your expenditures low. That's what I learned from that lesson. And for the most part, there have been some exceptions, but for the most part, I've been able to do that. Been married 30 years, raised 3 sons, and we've been able to, with 2 incomes, stay beneath our means for the most part. And it's worked out very, very well now that I'm in this season of life. But I always share that story because sometimes you and I are tempted to make a big purchase. And we don't really need to. It's just something that we can do, but we don't really need it, right? The difference between want and need. But I would encourage you in terms of my life lesson, and listen, that was like 4 decades ago, to do your best to generate multiple streams of income and at the same time keep your expenditures low, and it'll keep a smile on your face.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. Hey, I really appreciate you for coming on, my man.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of these nuggets. I'm probably gonna watch this episode like 3 or 4 times. Like at the end,
All right.
said something and I didn't get a chance to write it down, but I said, you know what, we've got to record it. So I really appreciate it, man. On the show, we
Yes, sir.
say that winners win, and we win when you win, and we want to thank you for being a winner.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being a winner as well, and keep doing all the great things you do. Make sure that we stay in touch. I like what you're doing.
Definitely. Thank you. And I really appreciate it, man. And we are
All
out.
right.
Boom.
All right.
Thank you for joining the podcast. And remember, change your mind,